Well, hi everybody. I'm Lisa Brooks, for those of you who don't know me, and it is such an honor to be able to be here with all of you to celebrate this absolutely beautiful book, Out of the Crazywoods. And I'm sorry that we can't all gather together somewhere here in Massachusetts to celebrate in person, but I hope that you will cherish this book over the summer and into the fall, wherever you are. I am really honored to be able to also celebrate Cheryl Savageau, the author. And I feel like I'm here because Cheryl was my first teacher, the first teacher that really mattered. um, because when she really helped me and has helped so many others to find their voices and to value their voices and their experiences. And one of the things that I love the most about Cheryl's poems and her poetry and all of her writing is that through her own writing, she helps us all to find our own voices, because she is fearless. She is absolutely fearless in being honest in her writing, honest with herself, honest with us. And then that helps us to be able to embrace our own experiences that we find within her poems. But it also helps us to grow and to learn from her experience, from those things that are very different from ours. And that was some of my journey in reading her book. So much of Cheryl's earlier work, you all know her beautiful books of poetry, Motherland, Dirt Road Home, Home Country, her children's book, Muskrat Will Be Swimming. I always found myself obviously in those pages and was so grateful to be able to see her bring Abenaki worlds to light, right? To bring the experience of being mixed blood in New England to light. And in this book, I had to struggle to understand, because the writing itself had utter clarity and beauty, but it was an experience that was different from mine. And so I had to learn, as I was reading the book, how to navigate these rough and calm waters. But Cheryl so beautifully captures that experience here, because of the art of her poetry and the honesty of her own experience and her bravery. I wanted to just mention to you a quote from a new book by Amity Gage called Sea Wife, because the resonance struck me when I was reading it. So I'm going to read this quote and then I'll tell you why. In this book, this novel, the main character is a woman who is literally at sea with her husband and her kids, but she's also struggling with depression, which she hesitates to name. And she says in the book, "I could never give it a name, my condition. I would have said I'm depressed if that had felt sufficient, but I felt more than depressed. I felt that I was depression, a swallowed woman. Besides, Michael, that's her husband, was right. I hated jargon in any form. Inner child, support system. I'd rather not speak at all if I had to use those words." This is the important part. "I could only tolerate the way the poets described sadness." And that's the gift that Cheryl is giving to all of us, right? Because she too found that she needed a book like this, a book of poetry, a book of beauty, a book of extraordinary prose to help her understand her own experience, to name her own experience. And because that book wasn't out there, she wrote it. And now this gift is here for all of us, but also for the many people who struggle to name their experience when there aren't the right words out there to describe it. This is not your usual memoir. It is a book that delves in deep, but does it with great beauty. And it is a book that finds balance. And that's something that we need so direly in our world right now, because Cheryl writes from the experience of knowing that we are in a world out of balance. And she's going to read to you today one of my favorite poems in this, which is about Bagua and Tekwa, the dynamic between movement and stillness that is in all our waterways that constitutes the Abenaki world. And when she reads it, listen carefully, because in those words and in those poetry are the medicine for putting our world back in balance, for putting our own inner worlds back in balance, but also for setting the world that we all inhabit into a greater state of equilibrium and healing. So thank you, Oleoni, Cheryl, for this beautiful Awikigan and for all of the gifts that you will keep on giving to many of us. Thank you so much. And with that, I will turn it over to Cheryl and her beautiful poetry and quilt.
Thank you so much, Lisa, from my heart, from my heart. I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for coming. I know this is a new thing for all of us, so I appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to Lise McLaughlin, who has put this whole thing together. It was her idea, and I would never have thought of it otherwise. So, you know, Ulioni, thank you so much, Lise. And so I'm going to start. I'm just going to start with this short poem that kind of explains what Crazywoods is. I'm going to find the best way to do this. It is what we call them, those places grown back after the forest was cut down, Crazywoods, and we walk crazy among them. About this book. Everything in this book was most likely written while I was in a hypomanic state. Of course, because if I wasn't manic, I wouldn't be writing. I'd be sleeping or staring at the shower curtain, trying to remember why I should take a shower anyway, or staring at the unfinished paintings in my studio and thinking, if I want to paint, I'll have to clear the table and get some water and take my paints and brushes out of the tote bag I used when I went to class. But I'm writing, so there's mania there. But not so much that I'm thinking too fast for my fingers or knitting 27 hats or flying around somewhere doing I don't know what the hell, trying to get away from all those people walking in slow-mo just to fucking irritate me. And I'm not in one of those mixed states where all the shades are down and I feel like shit, but I can't stand still and I can't tell whether it's me trembling or the car vibrating and everything feels like an assault and I'm so fucking agitated you don't want to hear about it anyway, but you probably will. So this is the Bagua and Tekwa piece that Lisa was talking about. We are studying language together. We've made flashcards with pictures on them and words on the reverse so we can quiz each other. We will never be fluent, never really be able to speak, but it is something, this learning. Nebi, water, Nebi zone, medicine water. Also, those streams of experience that flow through us and make up our own personal power. I am amazed. I wrote a whole poem to express this concept that is contained in one word in our language. Tekwa is moving. Bagua is stillness. River is Tekwa, lake is Bagua, stream is Tekwa, pond is Bagua, ocean is Bagua, waves are Tekwa. All life is water, and water in a shifting balance, from Tekwa to Bagua and back again. The trees know about water. Their blood runs up the maple every spring, carrying sugar stored from the year before, sustenance to grow the new leaves, and enough for us to share. The sap is Tekwa. The leaves are Bagua, Bawana Bagua. You wouldn't think leaves in stillness just looking at a tree, how the leaves move in the slightest breeze, how they rustle against each other in the wind. But a deeper look into the tree, into the movement within the tree, and you see the tree as part of the circle of water, and the leaves as places of stillness. The sap, the blood of the tree, runs in rivers up to the branches and twigs, then finds a resting place in the leaves as brooks flow into a pond. The leaf is the place that holds water and sunshine and air for the great transformation to occur, where water and carbon dioxide become sweet food and oxygen. Bagua and Tekwa, stillness and movement. I want to learn from this. I want to find the calm stillness of a pond and the clear flow of running water. We, like the trees who are our ancestors, are beings of water. My rivers run high with rapids and whirlpools the stories say were created by the impetuous twin. The ponds have stagnated, become places with no give and take. The sunlight hurts. There is no sweetness here. Nothing flows in or out. No breeze moves the surface. What I kind of loved about learning those words is that it made me think about bipolar in terms of stillness and movement, rather in terms of up and down. And that like grounded me in a place where I could understand it better. People were sort of trying to explain to me what bipolar was, because like most people, what I knew was manic depression, that's all. So this is what it is. They pretend to know. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes the blues just won't let go. The roller coaster disease. There is something about transistors. The transistors in my brain are doing their own thing. How can I hear myself at night? The radio under my pillow, transistors working, Martha and the Vandellas singing, love is like a heat wave, neurotransistors burning in my heart. So these neurotransmitters are transmitting too much or too little and generally fucking with the chemistry of my brain. It's not that I get seasick, not Tigger at the top of the tree crying, I see too much and I get sick. Not like that at all. Now it's about thermostats. Apparently, I don't have one. Funny, I always thought it was the laws of physics. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. I do that superbly. But okay, if they want to talk about weather, it seems they all prefer warm, sunny days, a Southern California kind of day. I'm from the Northeast. I prefer weather. Storms, a little rain on the pond, a 3-day blizzard, wind blowing leaves down sidewalks. I dream of tornadoes. But they are saying too many days of rain demands an arc, and I can't hang glide forever. I could get lost, and eventually the wind will fail. Okay, but what if I never again get to stand naked in the rain? What if I never get to be a human bird soaring on the thermals? That's the price you pay. The price for what? The price for what? Diagnosis. The shrink has done, I should start this by saying I was misdiagnosed for 20 years. 20 years. And that blows me away. And if I have any anger about this illness, it's that I could have had a different life, if only, you know. The shrink has done what no one else has ever done. He's taken a life history. I am not simply a depressive with an anxiety disorder. Those flights of creativity, those numinous insights, those trips to the bookstore where I find 27 books that are all somehow mystically connected, those weeks when I stay up until 4 a.m. playing piano, making quilts, those don't happen to depressives. They happen to people with bipolar. I know he is mistaken. Bipolar, manic depression, that's really crazy. Not respectively depressed, garden variety, everyone's on the latest SRI, it's nothing to worry about depression. Except I can't get out of bed, or if I get out of bed, I can't shower, it's just too much work. And if I do get up and eat breakfast, I fall asleep afterwards. But there are those days when I wake up, go into my studio, talk a blue streak to my friends at lunch, work night after night. I barely need to sleep at all. My aches and pains are mysteriously gone. I write 40 poems in 3 weeks. I make 5 quilts in 2 months. I knit a huge hat and put it in the washing machine to felt it. It's so cool, I go to the yarn store and buy hundreds of dollars of yarn and make 2 dozen more. This could be a business. I spend afternoons figuring out the amounts of each kind of yarn I would need for each hat. Then I am sick of yarn. I put it away. I will make hats again, I tell myself, but 6 years later, the yarn is still in the chest. He is medicalizing the artistic temperament, I tell my friends. I am not bipolar. I am not manic depressive. I've never driven to a casino in the middle of the night and gambled away our money. I've never fucked the football team or the girls' softball team, though I might have wanted to. Give me a little artistic license, for Christ's sake. So I'm not normal, whatever the fuck that is. I'm an artist. These things happen. This one's called The Tarot. There are over 20 decks in the maple chest. The Rider-Waite deck is the first deck I owned, the learning deck, the mother of all 20th century decks. The second deck, the round motherpiece deck with its childlike and women-centered images, is the feminist deck. I am the woman bathing in moonlight. There's the New World Tarot with wood carvings painted in jewel colors, and the Morgan Greer, one of my favorite reading decks, the one I go to for unadorned answers. The Fae Tarot with powerful fairies you've never imagined, the Quiet Houdes deck, and the Tarot of Prague, where the first golem was made, and some say, still sleeps. There is the Fairy Tale Tarot, which makes me smile but tells the truth, and the Animal Lords who have the bodies of humans, the heads of beasts. The Goddess Tarot is luminous, each card a goddess, Yamanji, Kuan Yin, I become them all. And the Buddha Tarot, where I build meditations and visit 4 mountains. I have spent a lot of time choosing the right homes for these decks. Some are wrapped in silk scarves. Some are in embroidered and beaded bags. One deck is in a round black box painted with lilies. A few are still in their original boxes, waiting. These are the journeys I take now, far from the witchcraft in the outside world, journeys through the cards, through dimensions where the figures in the cards talk to me, tempt me to stay longer than I should, give me gifts. I remember that when in the land of fairy, you mustn't eat or drink or you may be caught there. An evening, 20 years, a lifetime, in an afternoon. I spend entire days lost in the cards, laying out one spread after another, changing decks and comparing results, and time passes without my knowing. I am trying to find my life in these cards. In this card, the young man sits cross-legged on the lotus flower and plays flute for me. I breathe the music in like incense. The tall woman in purple looms over me. I look up into her distant face, but she does not speak. I join the 3 women dancing, dancing. We are sisters, we are young, we are dancing, holding hands in the sun, in the moonlight. Beware the swords, they are all sorrow. Here is the one I fear, the nightmare card. It is the boss painting over the lover's bed, the heart pierced 3 times. A woman is walking toward me across a plain of swaying grass, her hand in the mane of a lion. She is all red and gold fire. She knows I want her. I spread the cards in crosses, in rows, circles, and pyramids. I am riding on the rim of a giant wheel. Where it stops, nobody knows. The dog is barking at the top of the stairs. The woman is floating out of her body. The man is hanging by one foot. I am the woman dancing drunk on the roof, too close to the edge. This one's called What's Happening. It is so much easier to write about mania because with mania, there's always something happening. Who wants a story where nothing is happening? And yet, that is the reverse side of this fabric that is my life, the erotic and its opposite, the life force and the creeping death. People like to use the term downward spiral, but that is too active for depression. Mania is sometimes a dizzying, out of control spiral of agitation. Depression is the lying down of desire. Crying all the time is bad, but at least it's something. You can say, geez, I'm crying all the time. I better do something about that. But depression is not doing nothing. There's this old joke about the philosophy student who asks, who am I? The answer comes back, who's asking? With depression, that who is so deeply buried, it doesn't notice that nothing's happening. It doesn't get bored and look for something to do. Oh, sweet boredom that lets us know we are alive. Voices. There is nowhere that can be quiet enough because I am carrying this conversation inside my head. I don't know who they are, these voices, but they are not mine. Murmuring, murmuring, like in a theater hall before the concert begins. I strain to hear the words, but I can't. It's just an undercurrent, murmuring, murmuring, with waves that come and go. I can't write this because I'm afraid they will begin. I will have to be quiet as I whisper this to you. Sometimes the voices get louder, but no more comprehensible. It's not that they are speaking a different language, it's just that everyone is speaking at once, chattering, chattering. I remember when I realized how big the inside of my head is. The entire universe somehow fits inside. If I go to the center of my mind, the edges are infinite. So where does this echo come from? I carry the voices around for days, for weeks, decades. I'm exhausted from listening. I try to hear what they're saying, but I can't. I never can. This is a party I can't walk away from. These guests were not invited. They are intruders. They come and go whenever they want. My mind is their crash pad. So I have these encounters throughout the book, throughout my life, with the medical establishment, and a group of them are called Crazy Talk, and it's not my crazy talk, it's the crazy talk of the therapist. So this is one, Crazy Talk. She is large and disheveled. If you met us both in the street, she is the one you would peg as crazy. Her hair is uncombed. She wears an oversized man's white shirt, open over a gray knit top that has seen better days. This is a clinic for people without insurance. Maybe she thinks she doesn't have to dress up for us. She laughs at everything I say as if I'm there for her amusement. There's a name for that, hebephrenia, after the Greek goddess Hebe. I refrain from telling her this. Can I write that down, she asks me frequently and scribbles in her book. Her laugh is loud and raucous, like a cross between a cockatoo and a hyena. I fall into the role she's cast me in and entertain her with frivolous stories and wisecracks. When I need her to fill out a form for my disability, she doesn't remember who I am. So I want to do a couple from childhood. Let's see. I'm going to do this one. I am in love with Rita Moreno. We go to see West Side Story, my best friend and I. We are 12, and this is our first grown-up movie. It opens with a shot of New York City and a sharp whistle. This is real. This is a neighborhood. I am swept away by the music, the jazzy beat, the dancing down streets, under the highway, in parking garages. I will tell my parents the soundtrack is all I want for Christmas. For years, my sister and I will sing the songs, dance in the kitchen while washing dishes. On the way home, my friend tells me she is in love with Bernardo. Who do I love? I don't know. I am still dancing with the women on the roof. Our hands meet over our heads, and now my arm is around her waist. We lock eyes and walk in a circle around each other. Now we are swishing our skirts high, stamping our feet. Do da 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 dum 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 da 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 dum da da. I will be her skirt. I will be her shoes. I will be the flower she wears in her hair, the shawl she wraps around her shoulders. I am in love with Rita Moreno. So there is a hereditary component to bipolar, and a lot of times people with bipolar have someone in their family who is who has only the upside, who is enthusiastic most of the time and very rarely has depression. But there are also other things that are connected, like OCD. Anyway, this is one called Geraniums, also from starts with when I was a child. My mother is planting geraniums in the new brick planting boxes my uncle has built along the front porch. She carefully takes each plant out of its container, digs into the dark loam, places it carefully in the hollow she's made, and presses her fingers into the soil around it, fixing it in a line of geraniums from one side of the porch to the other. I hate geraniums. There is something about their garish red balls of blossoms that I don't like. They are the fire bell clang that warns of the prickly stems and leaves, the rank smell. I tell her I don't like them, and she tries to convince me. Oh, no, she says, they're beautiful. The next week, she does the same with the hostas, plants them in a line to hide the retaining wall my father made from cement blocks that separate the yard from the dirt road. They never grow tall enough to hide the wall. They are just a sad, spindly row, their whorl of leaves lost in linearity. I hate them, and I hate that my mother loves them. In my own garden, decades later, I grow to love hostas and all their variety, the giant ones with dark blue leaves, the white striped and the crinkled leaves, planted randomly in the shade or in groupings under trees, as if they grew there naturally. My mother loved the linear, the evenly measured, the symmetrical, the lines of space and thought that made sense of the world, that kept chaos at bay, like the pews in a church, the desks in the classroom, simple melodies sung in three-part harmony. One day, in the day before her death, we go out to eat at one of her favorite restaurants in town. She lines up her silverware, moves the plate so it's centered, then looks up as if she's been caught at something. I think I'm a little OCD, she says. Really, I say. Yes, she says, eyeing the curtains across the room. I can hardly keep myself from getting up to fix that pleat, she says. I turn and look, and I can't see the pleat that's causing her distress, but I catch her glancing that way in between bites, unable to relax, unsafe in this uneven world. I'm not like her. I don't have to straighten the world into lines. I am at home with its irregularities and soft edges. I have my own anxieties. Anything new, for example. I hear Joan Armatrading and I recoil. What is this? Music and poetry, a voice so unafraid to growl and squeak and caress. She scares me. Charles Mingus, I can't make sense of this music, I say. Don't try to make sense of it, just listen, a friend says. That helps, but they frighten me. It takes me years of hearing them before I like them, before they are among my favorite musicians. Any food or product I haven't tried before is a threat. I am the monkey in the snow by the hot spring who won't eat the sweet potato. Don't substitute. I like what I like. If I have put down a book, don't move it. If you have used anything in my kitchen, put it back in the right place. Don't change anything. I have my own kinds of lines. Like my mother's, they set the limits on control between the world that's safe and the chaos outside. My bookstore. When I sit down at the breakfast table, I am revved by a new idea. I think I'm going to open a bookstore, I tell my daughter-in-law. I'm tired of all these corporate bookstores that have bought out the indies, and there's no place to browse poetry or native lit or LGBTQ or women's or multicultural or even really good kids' books. Are you sure about this? She asks. It's a big thing, starting a business. I love books and I love bookstores and I know I can do this. We'll have poetry readings, music, storytelling for kids in the morning, and an evening story program for adults. I am busy planning the menu for the cafe. But you haven't gotten out of bed for 3 weeks, she says. I brush it aside. It's a thing of the past, and Marcy worries all day. When Chris gets home, she tells him, your mother wants to open a bookstore. She can't get out of bed for 3 weeks, and now she's working on a floor plan. She's not going to open a bookstore, he says. She's been talking about it all day. She's serious about this, Marcy says. You should see how enthusiastic she is. I know, he says, but don't worry about it. She'll forget about it by tomorrow. And I do. When you can't keep a job. When you can't keep a job, when panic attacks send you to the restroom several times a day, when people spritzing their desks with Windex or talking loud or walking by enrage you. When someone moves your Kleenex box and you feel attacked. When you rearrange the entire accounts payable files according to some new system only you can see the merits of. When the lights hurt your eyes and you put on sunglasses. When you bang your fist on the time clock. When you throw off your apron during lunch rush and walk cursing through the restaurant on your way out the door. When you hesitate. When you forget your train of thought. When your students ask you if you're okay. When you know you're not okay. When you try to do your best, but cannot. So there were certain parts of my life that were islands for me. And this is one. I have these little parts in the book called Islands of Sanity. And this is one called Grandsons. I keep the crazy times separate. They do not exist within this time with my grandsons. On other days, I may sleep, I may do tarot spreads, I may shop wildly on the net or in bookstores, I may weep in the shower, but on meme days, I am calm, I am grounded and reliable. I do not rage. Joe is born, then 3 years later, Adam. I sing lullabies, stack blocks, heat up bottles. I change diapers with joy, talking, touching their toes to their heads, tickling their bellies. I watch them 3 days a week while my daughter-in-law works. She brings them over at noon and my son picks them up at supper time. Each night I make supper with Joey watching from his bouncy, then from his high chair. Then eventually he is on a chair next to me, helping me stir the batter for cornbread or pour the juice into a glass. And Adam is in the bouncy chair. When my son and husband come home, the boys are playing dinner. Dinner is ready. I am not raging. I am not sad. I am being meme. We go for walks. From the stroller, Joe reaches out and touches the soft needles of the pine saplings. Baby pine trees, I tell him, baby trees. Each time we walk the path, he puts his hands out. Baby teas, he says. Later, we push the stroller together and he teaches Adam how to brush the 5-leaf bundles, how to avoid the prickly tips and slide down the long needles that bend gently against his hand. One night I sit in the screened-in porch, Joe in my arms. It is a cricket night, the air warm and moist, full of the scent of pines and leaf mulch. Listen, I croon to him, listen. We are together, surrounded by sweet singing in the dark. I collect the ceramic animals from the red rose tea boxes and line them on the windowsill over the kitchen sink. At least one day a week, Adam stands on a chair and washes them all in the dishpan full of sudsy water. He rinses each one carefully and puts them on a folded dish towel. He does this for me. Let me wash your animals, Meme, he says. Oh, they're so beautiful and clean, I tell him when he's done. At the consignment shop, I buy a changing table. I buy a crib. I find a used carriage at a yard sale, a stroller, a walker. One day there is an amazing rocking horse painted like a carousel horse in pinks and whites and silver. I take it home. Joe is 3 and rides on it all day. He stands on the saddle and does tricks. He is sure-footed and I'm not anxious and he never falls. When Adam gets old enough, he prefers to pet the horse, take care of it with his doctor set, rub it down with a rag. He wants to make sure the horse is happy and brings it grass from the yard to eat. Joe makes lines of Hot Wheels and fire trucks on the coffee table. Adam builds roads and towers. We all create landscapes with rocks and shells and pine cones and silk scarves. There are little people and animals and stories and everything. I sing Tora Lora Lora and Down in the Valley. Had an old dog and his name was Blue. Bet you $5 he's a good dog too. Ravioli, tasty ravioli. When Chris and Marcy watch American Idol, I say, they should have a competition for grandparents. They look at me, shocked, as if I might mean it. No, they say, no. So this is another take on the diagnosis. I found I kept going back in my head to that moment of diagnosis because it was so traumatizing. At the same time, it was the moment when there was hope, when I finally was going to be able to have a way to deal with this. This is called Yates. He spends the first 2 sessions taking a history of my life, my family. He is cold and precise. I feel like a bug under a glass. He is counting every hair, every facet of my eyes, the number of legs and the veining of wings. He can classify me as beetle, wasp, dragonfly. He classifies me as bipolar. He is wrong, he is wrong, he is wrong. Not only that, but he sees others in my family who are probably bipolar too. My grandfather, my brother, and the cousins who've actually been diagnosed bipolar or schizophrenic. But I'm not like them, I say. I don't drink, I don't use drugs, not since college anyway. He tells me a story about the poet Yeats, whose daughter was institutionalized, how he told Jung, the famous psychologist, that he couldn't understand it. She is drowning, Jung told him, in the water you are swimming in. Do you understand, he asked me? They are self-medicating because they are drowning. You are swimming. Up north, the swirling waters of the Pemi have carved a basin in the granite rock. What does it mean to swim in a whirlpool? You have to be a little bit crazy to live in the crazy woods. You have to look through the eyes of the old ones. You have to sing. You have to call the names. You have to greet the wind. You have to throw back your head and howl. You have to moan. You have to growl. You have to sharpen your claws. You have to be a little bit crazy. Crazy talk is another one. Lonely. This therapist likes to ask if I ever feel lonely. You spend a lot of time alone, she says. Yes, but when I'm writing, I don't feel alone. Well, when do you feel lonely, she asks. At parties, I say. At parties and in the middle of cities. So what do you do then when you feel lonely, she asks. I go into the woods, I say. I find a pond or a brook and sit on a log or a stump. Yes, she says. She shakes her head impatiently. But you're still alone, she says. Alone? I'm never alone in the woods. She doesn't believe me. She sees the woods as a world of objects, what she calls a romanticized landscape. She doesn't see it as a peopled world. The maples, oaks, birches, the cattails and reeds, the fish and beavers, the chipmunks, the ants, dragonflies, the deer, bear, even the mosquitoes, all people, all of us together. How could I possibly be lonely here? She shakes her head. I'm resisting, she tells me. I'm avoiding the subject. How can she ever help me heal when she won't listen to what heals me? So for me, there's like the proper diagnosis, and then there's meds and therapy, and then the other part of that is ceremony. And I just realized I didn't read the meds chapter, which I really want to read to you. Except I probably can't find it. Okay, there it is. Meds. The med that the psychiatrist, my med doc, puts me on is dangerous. It can cause a severe skin rash. If you don't get to the hospital right away, he tells me, you can die. I check my skin every few minutes, every little itch, every discoloration. Is that new, or did I always have that? Is that red blotch on my face something I should worry about? I lift up my shirt to check my belly. Isn't that where measles always starts? Maybe this rash is like measles, drawn to the heat. When I go to the bathroom, I check my thighs, my knees. I check my armpits when I put on deodorant. I don't want to die from this fucking medicine I agreed to take. I hate medicine. I don't want to take any. I told the med doc that I'm very sensitive to drugs. He said to call him if I get the slightest rash. What does the rash look like? I ask him over the phone. Do you have a rash? He asks. No, but what does it look like? Don't worry, if you have it, you'll know. It's a very severe rash. You won't miss it. Remember, you have lorazepam if you get anxious. Right. Then I'll be drugged and miss the damn rash. Or see it and say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Go to sleep and wake up dead. Why did I ever agree to take these meds? After 4 weeks with no rash, Dr. B ups the dosage. We'll go slowly with this. How are you feeling? Okay. People have stopped moving in slow-mo. That's good. I don't feel like I'm not me. Maybe a clearer me. Cheryl, meet Cheryl, he says. I don't stop cycling. I'm still far from stable, but my head is above the current. Ceremony. I am living up north. I am terrified all the time. I don't correspond with anyone in the native writing community. I spend my days with my tarot cards, doing spread after spread, trancing out for hours at a time, or sleeping. On good days, I get up and make meals. I still see the young writer I've mentored who is now getting her doctorate when she is home from school. We have become friends. I tell her again how afraid I am, that I never feel safe. I offer to do her cards. Next time she visits, it is the same story. It is always the same story, and things are getting worse, not better. What you need, she says, is a ceremony. And so I am sitting, wearing all the silver I own to deflect evil intentions, to throw them back where they've come from. We smudge with sweetgrass, we say the words, we build defenses, we ask help from all our relations. Later, we drive north into the whites, where we go down to the river and let it bless us. We walk the healing paths. For the first time in so long, I feel safe. I feel myself again, strong and whole and unafraid. I visit the mountains often, sometimes just taking off in the middle of the day and coming home late at night. My husband gets used to my comings and goings. The land works its magic. I put the tarot cards away in their boxes. I accept an invitation to do a poetry reading. I slowly climb up from underground. Wet ashes. I am in the closet hunting for the source of the smell. Something smells like wet ashes. I am sniffing sneakers, on my knees looking in corners, not knowing what I might find. My nose gets tired and I quit for the moment. What smells like wet ashes except wet ashes? Outside the closet, the floor is strewn with shoes and clothes, towels, blankets, hats. It's very frustrating. Maybe the cat walked through ashes outdoors and brought the smell inside. I walk downstairs for a cup of tea. Tea always helps. I turn on the stove, grab a tea bag from the tin, and the smell hits me again. Wet ashes. I open and sniff the tin. Nope, just tea. But the smell of wet ashes is strong in the kitchen, stronger than upstairs. And now I'm under the sink, moving Windex and rubber gloves, dishwashing detergent, spray bottles and bleach, dried up sponges. Nothing wet, no smoky carton smell. I never find the source, although it comes back frequently. I go down the cellar, search around our old furnace, but it is warm and dry. The old soapstone sink has a spider web, but the faucet isn't leaking. Then I notice there's laundry on the floor. Something in the pile might be the problem. I start sorting and sniffing, and then the smell is gone. In fact, I can't smell anything. My nose has shut down. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and smell it. I can't believe it is so strong that it wakes me up. This damn house is haunted with the smell of wet ashes. My husband says he can't smell it, but he can't smell anything. What I need is my son here. He's got a nose like mine. I talk to him on the phone. What can make us smell like wet ashes? I ask him. Wet ashes, he says. Very funny, I say. I don't know, Ma. It's midnight. Go to sleep. I was sleeping. The smell woke me up. It's probably nothing. It'll be gone in the morning. What if there's a fire someplace? There's no fire, Ma. That wouldn't smell wet. Maybe you were dreaming. Go back to sleep. I go back to bed. My husband is snoring. I imagine him a fireman, but they shower at the station. Even firefighters don't bring home the smell of wet ashes. I hate not knowing. It's like walking into the kitchen in the morning and smelling something rotten. The first thing you have to do is hunt down the bad onion, the lone potato left in the bin. Wet ashes follow me around for years. No matter how hard I hunt, I never find the source. I wear people out talking about it. I can't smell it, Ma. It's in your imagination. I guess I know when I'm smelling wet ashes, I tell him. In my mid-50s, I tell my therapist about it in passing. Do you know there are olfactory hallucinations, she asked me, smells that aren't really there? It's very common in people with bipolar illness. Some people get them with migraines. Maybe the shrink is wrong. Maybe wet ashes is the smell of the passion going out of my marriage, the cold remains of love and anger. It might be a hallucination, but here's the thing. When I leave the marriage, when I get a divorce, the smell of wet ashes goes away. Giving myself to beauty. They are talking on the radio about Cape Cod National Seashore, and I'm remembering the beaches in September, empty of crowds, the white sand, the gulls, the terns and sandpipers. The cedar maple swamp trail where blueberry bushes grow over your head. The cranberry bog where you have to dodge the poison ivy. The sea turtles by the side of the road. The dunes and the marsh grasses, and the light that Barry Lopez compared to Arctic light, beyond bright. The National Park Service is going to replace the roads that wind through the dunes and grass with straight 4-lane roads. The little roads are part of the charm, part of what makes the Cape special in the first place, one voice argues. I love those little roads in the Cape that wind naturally with the land, the turns and rises, pitch pines and grasses, and dunes all around until suddenly you're at the sea. On the radio, another voice says, but 4-lane roads are standard for national parks. After a while, I can't listen anymore. The ugly makers, the destroyers. It is not enough that they cut the forest down to feed the glass factory and created this desert of dunes. Most people think this is natural because the land heals, adapts, transforms itself and becomes another kind of beauty. Still, these dunes are blowing away. Every year, people plant young pines that hold the sand with their roots, but it is slow going. And now, with Earth's temperature rising, this place will soon be reclaimed by the sea. I hear the voices waging paper wars against the land. I decide there is nothing more important than giving myself to beauty.
Cheryl, do you want to leave some time now for the Q&A?
Yeah, I want to just read one more. What time is it? Where are we? Okay, just 2 more short ones. Stigma. Someone asked for this one, actually. There will never be a time when it doesn't matter. It will always be there. No one will ever forget. Everyone else will be allowed to have moods, behave crazy, badly, even crazy, but I will not. Anything I do is a symptom, and it will always be that way. Even people I love will question, scrutinize any behavior. If I cry or laugh or show anger or fear, if I am excited or enthusiastic, if I am sad or disgusted or disappointed, if I stay up all night or work in my PJs at noon, there will always be the question, is she crazy again? Even if someone else is volatile, unstable, irritable, agitated, maybe they say God talks to them. Maybe they believe in conspiracies or that the earth is flat. They can rant, they can raise their voices, they can slam the doors of the kitchen cabinets. Their laughter can fill the restaurant. They can throw a punch in a bar. They have not been diagnosed, so they do not have a mental illness. They are not crazy. Anyone could say anything about me and they would be right. It would be my word against theirs. And my word can't be trusted because you never know. You never know because remember that time? That was before I was on meds, before I went to therapy for 10 years. I'm not that way anymore. I can see it in their faces. They are not convinced. I could be off my meds. I have a mental illness. I am crazy forever. And then this last one. It is a slow process becoming human, this pulling back, this trimming of nails. She will roar softly, use words instead of pause. She will keep her lumbering ways, eat salmon and blueberries whenever she can get them, sleep when she pleases, wail, sometimes sing. Thank you. We're going to open this up to questions and answers, Q&A. So I think this change, is the screen going to change now, Lise?
Yes, the screen is going to change.
Okay.
People should know that we're recording, and it's okay for you to just stay behind your stopped video. You can still ask a question. Everybody who has a question should unmute, and then Cheryl will call on you to speak in turn. Okay?
Questions or comments or anything? I can see a lot of you now in my gallery view. Thank you for being here. Hi, Cecilia.
Anyone who wants to ask a question, just unmute and go ahead.
Hey, Deb.
This is a generic question.
Okay.
Generally speaking, bipolar people are very creative, or is that just your talents?
Actually, there have been studies around this that do show that people with bipolar do have certain amount of creativity. I mean, I think there are gifts that come with it as well as, you know, it's just, you know, I mean, when you're hypomanic, you're very creative and everything is wonderful and the world loves you. The trouble with it is, for me, it would morph into rage and then I would crash into depression. And particularly if you're not medicated, then what happens is as you get older, you have fewer and fewer days of hypomania or of bliss and more days of depression. So it's important. For me also, it was just like, it was so damaging to my family. Not the days when I was blissful, but all the other days. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for writing this. I think it's going to end up helping a lot of people.
Thank you, Denise. I hope so. This is so different than being in a room. So please feel free to ask questions. It's really, you know, when people are milling around, everybody has energy going on, and we can have a conversation more easily.
Hey, Cheryl. I was just curious, how do you feel while you're reading these now?
Well, you know what happens, Russell, when you're a performer, you have to distance a certain amount, but there are some that I have chosen not to read because they're a little too difficult for me emotionally.
Yeah, I was just curious, but it's a great book. I'm so glad it finally got published.
Thank you. Me too.
I just finished it 2 days ago, and Scott had read it before I did, but I love the way it moves from one thing to another, and it never seems to be odd. It just seems to move really well. I just really love it.
Thank you. Thanks. That it's not linear.
We missed a few minutes. Sorry.
Having trouble hearing.
Okay, I'm going.
Okay. I think what he was saying is that it's not linear, but that the structure, that things move from one thing to another, it doesn't really seem confusing. So I appreciate that, because, you know, how to finally structure the book was a question, you know, like what's the way to do that. So looking at how different pieces played off each other was part of my thinking of how to do that, with much help from some of the readers, Lisa and my son and Pam, who's not here right now, but they were three of my readers who just continually gave me feedback as to how it was working. So it's good to have readers.
Cheryl, it's Grace here. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. What, as you look back, what was it that gave you the stillness with your grandsons?
You know, I'm not sure about that. And even as I read it, I go like, why was I able to have stillness on those days? You know, and I'm not completely sure. I think there was something in me that felt balanced. But I also know that that wasn't necessarily true when I was a young mother, you know? So, yeah, it's confusing to me as to what it was. I would think, well, if I could somehow compartmentalize for that, like, why couldn't I do that in general? But I know that on the other days I would just be sleeping, or I would be doing something else that was totally unbalanced. So, you know, I don't know the answer. I wish I did. It would be nice to be able to, you know, to bottle that and not have to take meds.
I mean, they clearly gave those experiences, the children themselves clearly gave a richness to your life that was very beautiful, very, very beautiful to read.
Thank you.
And even reading it, it was, I moved into a stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very moving for me.
Thank you. Great. That's so good for me to know. I love knowing that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I also want to say that the first thing I saw when we ordered the book and it came, the first thing that I saw was the beautiful quilt. It just, I kept saying, oh my God. It's a stunning cover. It just is so, it exemplifies so much of what you talk about. And
Thank you. Thank you.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
I really appreciate it. Lisa, you had something to say about the quilt when the book cover first came out.
Me, Lisa?
Yeah. Yes, me, Lisa.
Yeah. I don't remember what exactly. Do you remember what I said back then?
Oh, I do actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because it made it feel really a good feeling for me, was that I was doing the same thing with the quilt that I was doing with the book, which was putting all the different pieces together.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that, yeah. So I appreciated that it was a good choice, that it went together well.
That is so true. That relates to the comment that Russell made about how everything fits together, even though it's not linear. That's beautiful.
Yes. Good. Because it's always, for me, that's not the way my brain works. I don't know if it's bipolar or if it's just that's the way memory is, but to work in a straight linear way is just not something that comes easy to me. It's this was the only way I could write the book. And I know some people have called it sort of experimental, but for me, this is just the way my mind works. So it had to be that way.
Cheryl, Cecilia here.
Hi, Celia.
Hi. I just wanted to make a comment about the wet ashes. And just listening to the story of it, you know, like the different anecdotes, trying to locate them. And one of the things that just kept coming through my mind was something from another side, letting you know that something was going to occur, something was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had feelings similar with olfactory. Like one time I'm sitting on the bus and there's this beautiful bouquet of roses. Aroma came to me. And I kept looking around to see whether or not who was holding this gorgeous bouquet. And other times, the smell of a cigar.
Mm-hmm.
the smoke of cigar. So I just wanted to make the other instances with olfactory, but I just kind of wanted to mention that that was something that occurred that I first thought of, is like something is telling her, or sometimes it's auditory for people, sometimes it's olfactory, sometimes it's just, you know, that crowd in your head, you know, that
Yeah, and I
someone
think
always speaks up. But I just wanted to make a comment about that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there are things that we have in our lives that some people would say are hallucinations, but I think there are some things that are just normal things that everybody has. Like every once in a while I hear my mother say my name, and I don't think that's a hallucination. I just think she's saying
Yeah.
hello, you know. But I think even when we have things that, like the wet ashes, that whether it's coming from somewhere else or it's just our own brain trying to tell us, you know, in images, you know, rather than, you know, figuring it out in your head in words. I think that they're meaningful quite often if you're having voices or a vision or an olfactory thing, whatever. I think that even if you call it a hallucination, they're not without meaning. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
that's my feeling.
Thank you.
Cheryl,
Yes,
you mentioned in your book Charles Mingus. Do you like his music?
I do very much, but I didn't at first. It was just so, it was outside my experience, and it was so difficult for me to hear it for that reason. Now I love Mingus. Yeah.
Your friends here and the readers of your book might be interested to know that Charles Mingus was bipolar.
You know what? I forgot that. I totally forgot that. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. That's cool. Wish I could share it with him. And I think I want to say this. This is very hopeful, but I think that Mingus actually would like the book, because I think it doesn't complicate it. I think it tries to be simple, and he's the one who said, you know, anyone can make things complicated, but you know, the job of the artist is to make things simple. You know, that's when real creativity happens. So I think he would like the book if I could send it to him.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll just read the ones that are in the chat. A couple
Okay.
nice comments. Thank you, Cheryl. That was terrific. Thank you for walking us through the Crazywoods, pointing out things we might not have noticed or understood on our own, and familiar things that require further thought. This is a powerful work and a privilege to hear you read it. And the person is sorry they have to leave for a meeting at 2.
Okay.
That's probably the case with most of the people. Do you want to let them know how they can get the book?
Oh, yes. So you can get it at the University of Nebraska Press, and I suggest there because you can get it there right now cheaper than Amazon. So if you don't already have it, that's the place to go. And I want to thank you all again for being here, and I hope sometime in the next year that I can see some of you in person and maybe do this in a slightly more personal way. But I thank you from my heart for coming today. Appreciate it.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
For being here.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bonjour.
Congrats, Cheryl. Great job.
Great. Thank you.